right, so today we are in HaSatan, Did the Devil Make You Do It? Part 6. And the answer is no, he didn't, okay? He did not make you do it. Whatever it is, he didn't make you do it. I'm gonna recommend also, I know it's already recording the teaching part, but it's good. So the teaching part, go to, if you're watching this teaching, go to Friday, September 19th, 2025's Torah study, when I talked about what the Creator does or doesn't do a little bit, okay? So there was a little rant I did in there at the end that would help you understand what he does and doesn't do a little bit. We'll talk about that in the teaching at some point. All right, but let's go here first to we're gonna do a reset. This is not like last time I did it, the whole teaching was a reset. One sentence reset, just to remind us that Yahweh restricts, constrains, and limits what HaSatan can do. I just want to make sure each teaching we covered that one point. Let's remember that HaSatan can't just do whatever he wants. At least not in regards to you, okay? He has to understand that there's restrictions and constraints on him and limits to what he can do, just like we see in the book of Job, okay? So HaSatan cannot just do whatever he wants to do. Now, so we're going to begin in chapter 16 of Matthew. See, I'm not doing a reset today. And I hope you guys are getting a lot out of this and seeing HaSatan in a much more clear way, okay? Now, Matthew 16. So I'm going to read you a couple of verses and then I'll start to break them down. So we're getting in verse 21. From that time, Yeshua began to show to his taught ones that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem and to suffer much from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and to be raised again the third day. So this is in chapter 16. He doesn't get to that for a little while, right? So he's starting to show them these things. And Kepha took him aside and began to rebuke him. This is the kind of stuff I just want us all to realize. Do you realize what he's doing? And do you do the same kind of thing where an authority figure that you're supposed to trust, whether you understand what they're doing or not, you don't rebuke. He's rebuking Messiah. In other words, he's saying to Messiah, no. Whatever you just said, no. Really? It's like your 6-year-old correcting you as a parent. You're like, what makes you think you know what you're talking about to correct me? Maybe more like a 3-year-old. We're going to correct Messiah? So Peter is like, be kind to yourself, master. This shall not be to you. If Messiah said it's going to be, it's going to be. But he turned to Kepha and said, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for your thoughts are not those of Elohim, but those of men. We're going to get into that verse here in a minute. Then Yeshua said to his taught ones, if anyone wishes to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his stake and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life shall lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited if he gains the whole world and loses his own life? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his life? For the Son of Adam is going to come in the esteem of his Father with his messengers, and then he shall reward each according to his works, what he does. Let's break this thing down a little bit, okay? Let's break this down. Now, and then we're going to get the framework. I want us to go back earlier in the chapter. Let's just break this down first. Okay, so he tells them something. Hey, this is what's going to happen soon in the future. And Kepha has a problem with it. And then what is Yeshua's response? He says, get behind me, Satan. Now, I have to make this clear for everyone. Satan didn't all of a sudden possess Peter or take his place. Okay, let's remember what Satanis means, or what Satan means, right? What's the definition there? It means an adversary, okay? Satan is translated from the Greek Satanis, meaning adversary. So he said, get behind me, you're being an adversary, okay? Do you know that you can be wonderful? You could be obnoxious. You could be, a benefit. You could be a curse. You could be a jerk. You could be a blessing. Right? You can be all of these things. Nobody possessed you, good or bad, in any of those things. He's saying, so at this moment, he's saying, Peter, you're being a Satan. You're being an adversary. He says, get behind me is an idiomatic phrase from their day. He's basically saying, hey, we're not going there, okay? He said, because that mindset is a stumbling block. Now let me explain why Satan is the label he's getting. He says, because your thoughts are not those of Elohim. Satan's or Peter's? It was Peter's thoughts. Remember, Peter's bright blue. Whatever shade you want to go with. He's the one chopping off or trying to chop off heads, misses and gets an ear, okay? He's the overly emotional one. We're going to deal with him a lot in this teaching, either today or next time, but we're going to deal with him a lot because we have this happening. We also have during the Last Supper when Yeshua wants to wash them and he gets all his blueness out of there too. It's his thoughts that are the problem. They're not HaSatan, the being, HaSatan's thoughts. They're Peter's thoughts, okay? But when he's having these thoughts and acting upon them, he's acting like Satan. All right, that's how we make sure we understand this, right? So Satan isn't making Peter do anything. This is Peter. As a matter of fact, none of us is surprised, knowing Peter, that he's doing these things, okay? He's that one of the 12, okay, that's the problem child, okay, who's gonna be overly zealously one way or the other. I don't mean the problem child like he's bad. He's just gonna swing that pendulum wide one way or the other. He's having a hard time staying in the middle. That's Peter. That's the way he's always been. We've seen that throughout anything that has a discussion about Peter. That's what he's like. Now, so he says, your thoughts are not those of Elohim. So you're allowing yourself to not listen to Yeshua, who's telling you what's happening from Elohim. You've got your own thoughts. And since my words, this is Yeshua, I'm speaking for him, because my words don't match your thoughts, you're having an issue. Okay? Some of you have a hard time with that with any kind of authority. You have a hard time submitting if those thoughts don't match yours. Because you want to filter everything, as Peter does, through you. He's filtering only through himself, isn't he? Okay? And when you do, if you're filtering only through you, meaning you're not lining up with the authority, you're acting as a Satan. An adversarial thing will pop up. We're going to see this with Judas in a little bit too, okay? As part of this whole discussion. But I want us to understand, an outside thing did not come in. Inside is being revealed, okay? Peter does not want to see anything happen to Yeshua. Can we all agree? I mean, he's very protective, very zealous, very emotional. And so when Yeshua said that, he's like, no, that's not acceptable. So he says, no, be kind to yourself. That's not going to happen. And Yeshua's like, if I say it's going to happen, it's going to happen, okay? But that's how we are sometimes as parents with our children. We say something, the child goes, boo, and you're like, if I said, I'm a little older than you, I have a little more experience, I know what I'm talking about. So when I tell the child, that doesn't work, and the child's like, oh, and then it goes and falls apart, and then he goes, cries, and I told you, it wasn't gonna work. Or when a parent says to a child, you keep doing that, you're gonna break it. The child looks at you like you're an idiot, keeps doing it, and then breaks, and then, of course, never owns the fact that they're the idiot. And then they just want you to buy them a new one. And they'll go, no, I told you not to do that. It was going to break. No, I'm not buying you a new one. Because you kept doing it. We're stubborn. But we are the ones who are stubborn. HaSatan doesn't interfere and take us over to make us stubborn. Okay? The problem here, though, is thoughts. Your thoughts are not the thoughts of Elohim. They're your thoughts. Okay, let this mind be in you that was in Messiah Yeshua, Philippians 2:5. Okay, you should know that one by now, memorized, because I quote it all the time. Okay? And so he's not letting that mind be in him because Yeshua said it, so we know what's on his mind. Sometimes you might say, well, I don't know what Yeshua's mind is thinking about. Well, if Yeshua says it, you know what he's thinking about. He's saying, hey, by the way, I'm going to go to Jerusalem, and they're going to treat me really badly and kill me, and then I'm going to rise on the third day. That's what he says in verse 21. And Peter's like, because he can't process that that's okay, all right? He can't process. See, some of you really struggle with what Abba says and what the Word says and what the Father says and what comes from leadership, etc. You can't process it if it doesn't match your picture, your desire, what you want things to be, or you don't like what was said. Now let's understand. So then you get in the same attitude. Okay, I want to finish the sentence. You get in that same attitude. Now, let's understand what the problem is. The problem is you're reacting to something that you don't, in reality here, what's the problem? Peter doesn't really understand the point. He just doesn't want Yeshua to die and be treated bad. He didn't really catch the third day resurrection thing. He doesn't know why this has to play out. Doesn't understand that there's a purpose to any of this. See, you will do the same thing. You can act adversarially. Has anybody here had the experience, I don't care which side you were on, where one of the people in the discussion argument didn't understand what the other was trying to say, and that's why there was a fight? And once they finally did get it, the fight was settled because they finally could then, you had to sit there and say, you're not listening, you're missing the point. That's not what I'm saying. Anybody had an argument where they said the words, that's not what I'm saying? Okay? And Yeshua was looking at him like, you don't understand what I said. Okay? And that's going to be a theme throughout when we start seeing people coming into alignment with an adversarial disposition. Okay? They start acting, thinking in an adversarial way. Here we're seeing it with Peter. All right? And so he says, your thoughts are not those of Elohim, but those of men. See, men think like this. Men think, I don't like what's going to happen here, and I don't understand it, so I'm just going to be against it. I don't like it, I don't understand it, so I'm against it. Okay? And we see this in life today all the time. All the time. How many times do you see, not getting political here, but how many times do you see our current president go to do something and people start lashing out against it because they don't understand it? That's my opinion, that they don't understand what he's doing or why he's doing it, okay? And so they just jump to their flesh conclusions and they get it wrong, and then we have all of this happening between left and right in this country, okay? So like when, for example, he was campaigning first and he talked about making Mexico pay for the wall, right? The flesh of man, or the more simple-minded, thought that he meant that Mexico would literally send money to pay for the wall. That was never what he meant. And I told my wife, who didn't understand what was going on, because she's just like, what is he talking about? So I said, he intends to make them pay through trade changes, balancing the equation with the trade deficit so that pays for the wall. So in essence, they will pay for the wall. Because the trade imbalance, if he fixed it from this huge amount to this little amount, that difference was enough to pay for the wall. Do you understand that? I knew that's what he was talking about, but the left will naturally, literally say, but Mexico didn't write a check for the wall. And they were never going to, and he never thought they would. So this isn't a political point. I'm just making it just for an example, okay? Now you can argue that black and white literal thing. And Yeshua was giving him a literal thing here. He said, look, they're going to do all this stuff to me, but because it didn't compute with Peter, he was against it. Because he didn't like the idea, okay? He didn't like the idea. Look, it's the same thing with this country economically, okay? If you, I'm just going to use you as an example. If you have a financial problem, fixing it is going to take suffering a little worse while you're fixing it. Can we all agree? In order to fix it, you're going to have to cut back, suffer a little bit while you're trying to also make more, whatever, to fix it. I mean, one of our top teachers of getting out of debt and finance is a guy named Dave Ramsey. Ramsey says what? If you're willing to live like nobody else, meaning really suffer and cut it all back to the bone, someday you'll be able to live like nobody else in a great way. That's one of his sayings, right? So when we have a leader, we can use Trump as the example or not, whatever, who says, look, some of the things that we have to do, like with tariffs and this and that, well, that's going to make our prices go up. And yes, it will temporarily. It's part of a process of fixing a problem. See, but we in the flesh, we don't want to suffer while we're fixing something. We don't want to pay a price to fix something, but it's necessary. Okay, you might not like my examples, I don't care, that's fine. Use something else in your life, okay? To understand that if there's something in your life, if you have a problem with your health and diet, you are not gonna be pleased cutting a bunch of stuff you love out of your diet. But it's necessary, and it will get you to where you wanna go, but you're not gonna like it. You're not, okay? I'm working on mine, and there's a bunch of stuff that I love that I'm not eating right now. And so I guess that could be considered suffering. It's all about of your mindset, how you handle it, right? You could choose not to suffer, but I can imagine people suffering. Oh, I don't get to eat my pizza and my chocolate and blah, blah, blah. All right? Yeah. So we whine and cry. But how are you going to fix the problem without suffering? Okay? Okay, some of you to fix the problem have to go and retool so you can make more money. That's not going to be fun, especially if you're 50 or whatever, and you're not 20 and you have to go restart over again at 40. Okay? So you got to suffer and pay a price. Isn't everything in Scripture about paying a price? But are you willing to pay the price? Okay? You're going to pay a price either way. Not doing it and ending up just staying broke and suffering, that's a high price. Okay? That's a super high price. It is what it is, right? So what is Yeshua saying? He's saying, look, you're not having the mind of Elohim right now, which is open to all of the possibilities and the wonderful depth of what Abba is teaching us beyond what our knee-jerk, fleshly, earthly, human reaction is. Because really, the first time this is being said, we already know the story, but they didn't. It hadn't happened yet, right? So sure, Peter's like, they're going to do what? They're going to kill you? He should have been like, can you explain further? I know that that's somehow is supposed to happen and it's ultimately a good thing, but I don't get it, right? No, he's like, oh, no, there's no way that's happening. I'm not going to let that happen. Okay? But the authority figure said, this is what has to happen. It doesn't matter that you don't understand. You know what? I didn't understand this as a kid. I understand it now. This is why parents do say from time to time, because I said so. Sometimes they do that just because they don't want to have to argue with you and don't want to have to explain themselves. But they shouldn't have to. They should just say, you should trust that if I said it, that's all you need. Okay? If you trust me, that should be enough. Now, of course, a lot of parents just say it because they want to have that dominance and control or whatever, and it's not as trustworthy as it should be. But it should be a statement of, you should trust me enough that if I say so, because isn't that what Abba said in the covenant? You will agree to do everything I say? Because you trust that whatever I say is right? Isn't that the basic? So here we have this thing with Kepha, and then so Yeshua then takes it further and says, look, if anyone wants to come after me, let him deny himself. In other words, you got to say whatever I wanted, whatever I thought has to be subjugated to the above. So it's not like deny yourself, meaning I'm not me anymore. In other words, put what you want, you think, your preferences behind putting him first, okay? I want pizza, but I've now decided that that's not good for me in whatever I'm eating on a regular basis. So good. So then I deny that desire to have the pizza. Okay, that's what he's saying by deny yourself. So Peter's desire is for Yeshua not to die. I'm assuming the main thing that triggered him was, because they were picking on him, the Pharisee scribes, he'd been picked on before. It was the dying part. I'm sure he did not do well with, right? So Yeshua's saying, look, if you want to follow me, you're going to have to deny yourself and trust me. You're going to have to take up your stake and follow me. What is taking up your stake? It means that you're going to suffer, you're not going to get it, you're going to have to go through all these things and trust me. The journey is not, all roses, okay? It's not paved in gold and everything's wonderful and all that stuff. The journey does have suffering in it, because how else are you going to grow? You don't grow without suffering. Okay, that's what makes us, look, if you want to build muscle, what do you have to do? You have to make your muscle suffer. Isn't that how you build muscle? You go to a gym, you stress it, you put a stress on it. I'm not saying tear it and damage it, but you stress it by lifting a weight that's heavy. And that stress causes growth, okay? So we have to go through things that are stressors in order to grow. And Yeshua says, look, you're going to have to go through all that. And then he goes into some other things about whoever wishes to save his life shall lose it, etc., okay? But I want people to understand that he's trying to make sure you understand that in the end, I'm going to come back and my reward will be there for each of you according to your works. In other words, how you handled all this, how you handled your mind, okay? Now let's look at the context of this, because Peter's not just getting this little smack for no reason. There's some really important things that happen right before this that makes it even more understandable why Yeshua is giving him a little bit of grief here, okay? Start in verse 13, all right? Now when Yeshua came into the parts of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his taught ones, saying, "Who do men say the Son of Adam is?" And they said, "Some say Yochanan the Immerser, some Eliyahu, others Yirmiyahu, or one of the prophets." And he said to them, "And you, who do you say I am?" And Shimon Kepha answering said, remember this is the one we're having a problem with later, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living Elohim." Yeshua answered, saying, "Blessed are you, Shimon Bar Yonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in the heavens. And I also say to you that you are Kepha, and on this rock," well, he said you are Kepha. Kepha was a pebble, okay? "You are Kepha," and he says, "On this rock I shall build my assembly." What rock? The rock of the understanding that he's Messiah, not Peter. Peter's not the rock. The understanding that Messiah is the rock. And that's what he's building the assembly on. And the gates of the grave shall not overcome it. "And I shall give you the keys of the reign of the heavens, and whatever you bind on earth shall having been bound in the heavens, and whatever you loosen on earth shall be loosened in the heavens." Then he warned his taught ones that they should say to no one that Yeshua is the Messiah. And so from that time, Yeshua began to show his taught ones what had to happen. So here's Peter with this brilliant, inspired thing from above, "You are the Messiah," and then he's acting like he doesn't understand that he's the Messiah. You see the flow? Everything is context, right? To really understand what's going on, you have to have the context. So then Yeshua looks at him and said, "You're acting like a Satan right now. Seriously, you recognize me, the Father gave you the inspiration, and you're gonna act stupid. You're gonna act the fool." I'm serious, I'm not mocking anybody or anything. I mean, Kepha was all over the map. He was the best and the worst at times, right? He was all over the place. But aren't you that way sometimes? I mean, he's very much more human than some of the characters we read in Scripture, because you can relate to all of that. And if we're gonna go with the color code stuff, he's extremely blue. He sees what he sees, and that's gotta be the way it is, and he's gonna make sure to do what he can to force it. They came to arrest Yeshua after he said all that stuff was gonna happen, and he tried to stop it. Because he wasn't submitting. He didn't let the right mind be in him. He had his own mind still in him, driving. Is it making sense? Okay? Now, so here's the framework. Kepha recognized and accept on one level who Yeshua was, that he was Messiah. He didn't, however, fully embrace all that this meant, so that he would trust him even when he didn't like or didn't agree with what he said, instructed, expected, or required of him. One of the few times I actually wrote notes. I wanted to make sure I wrote that thought down, okay? Let me read it again. Put yourself in this place. Instead of Kepha, put your name there. Recognized and accepted on some level that Yeshua was what he was, that he was the Messiah, okay? Who he was. However, do you fully embrace all that that means so that you can trust him even when you don't like, agree, or whatever with what he said? Instructed or expected or required of you? That's what's really going on here, right? Do we do this with people in our lives where we don't fully embrace their role in our lives? Simply recognizing someone's title or positional role doesn't mean that we will automatically or naturally respond to them in that role. A lot of you walk around going and call me rabbi all you want, but do you treat me that way? Do you respect the instruction and guidance that comes from it? You call elder all day long, but do you listen and take the guidance with respect to where that's coming from? You call somebody, your husband, okay? But does he have the authority and respect that that role is supposed to have? Of course, he should be walking in it and earning it. It goes both ways. But still, I'll say that again. Simply recognizing someone's title or positional role doesn't mean that we will automatically or naturally respond to them in that role. In this case, we're talking about Messiah. All right? Again, as always, we're looking for ourselves in all of this. This is for your edification, to be part of your growth and transformation. Amen? All right? All right, now, let's go to John 6. okay? We're going to be jumping around the Gospels a lot in the next couple of parts of this. All right, John 6, we're going to begin in verse 54. All right. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood possesses everlasting life, and I shall raise him up in the last day. For my flesh is truly food, and my blood is truly drink. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood stays in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so he who feeds on me shall live because of me. This is the bread which came down out of heaven, not as your fathers ate the manna and died. He who eats this bread shall live forever. He said this in a congregation teaching in Capharnaum. Therefore, many of his taught ones, having heard, said, that this word is hard. Who's able to hear it? And Yeshua, knowing within himself that his taught ones were grumbling about this, you see, they still hadn't gotten it, right? Instead of just saying, we don't understand, they were having issue with it. Okay? He says, does this make you stumble? What does stumble mean? Does it make you doubt? That's what stumble is all about. Does this make you stumble? Cause doubt. As a matter of fact, isn't that what Yeshua said to Kepha? They said, get behind me, Satan. You know, otherwise you'll be a stumbling block. You'll be causing doubt in people, right? Now, he says, what if you see the son of Adam going up where he was before? It is the spirit that gives life. The flesh does not profit at all. The words that I speak to you are spirit and are life. But there are some of you who do not believe. For Yeshua knew that from the beginning who they were who did not believe and who would deliver him up. Uh-oh. And he said, because of this, I've said to you that no one is able to come to me unless it's been given to him by my Father. From then on, many of his tall ones withdrew and were not walking with him anymore. Why weren't they walking with him anymore? Because of what I said before. Simply recognizing someone's title and position doesn't mean that you're ready automatically to submit under, to handle and respond properly to that role. In verse 67, Yeshua therefore said to the 12, do you also wish to go away? Shimon Kepha then said, Master, to whom, where are we going to go? Not just where, but who? In other words, who shall we go under? You know what? I'm going to say this, take it any which way you want. But if you find yourself a teacher, if that teacher's not the teacher for you, who are you going to go under? You need to go find another one, right? See, a lot of you just casually walking around just listening to lots of teachings and could care less about being under any kind of authority or teacher. But, you know, who's giving you the words of life, right? Listen to what he says. Kepha goes, Master, where will we go? To whom will we go? You possess the words of everlasting life. You possess the words. And when we have believed and we know that you are the Messiah, the Son of Elohim, we know this, we have believed. Yeshua answered and said, have I not chosen you, the 12? And one of you is a devil. I'll break this all down here in a minute, but it was all to get to verse 70 where it says one of you is a devil. And he was speaking of Judas, right, Yehuda of Kiriath, son of Shimon, for he, one of the 12, was about to deliver him up. So now when it says one of you is a devil, okay, the word devil is being used there. Diablos, meaning slanderer or accuser, attacking another person's reputation. So one of you is an accuser, a slanderer who's going to attack the reputation. See, again, we want to say devil. We're thinking like the way the world has described us, what the devil is, this red horn tail, the whole thing, like it's a being. He says, one of you is having issues. One of you is going to accuse. One of you is going to attack. One of you is going to be that adversary, right? Okay, that's what diablos means, a slanderer. Now, let's kind of go backwards. There's some really cool things that kind of came to my attention while I was getting prepared for this only a few minutes ago. That's the way Abba works it, because I review everything while you guys are going through some of the stuff in here. And this came, and I think it's beautiful. Verse 54, let's start at the beginning here. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood, isn't that where they were having the problem? It sounded kind of cannibalistic and weird. Possesses everlasting life. So he who eats my flesh. So flesh equals what? What we do. It's what we do, okay? What's blood? Blood is what? Life is in the blood. So what is life? Life is the mind, thoughts, and beliefs that gives life to what we do. The flesh is animated by blood pulsing through it, right? It's fed by the blood pulsing through you. So he says, you have to eat my flesh and drink of my blood. Now he does go further on and says things like, well, whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood stays in me. Yeah, because we'll have that mind and we'll have the actions. He says that, let's see, in verse 63, it's the spirit that gives life, the flesh that doesn't profit at all. So in other words, flesh is just flesh without the blood. Okay, it's the flesh, the spirit, he calls it the spirit in that verse, but he's talking about the blood, because we know the life is in the blood. And so if we're using this in the picture, he's trying to paint a picture. He's not being literal. He's not saying literally be a cannibal, eat my flesh, drink my blood. Sorry, Catholics, I don't know what came up with this whole communion thing, but that is not scriptural, okay? But what about the Last Supper? They were doing a ritual that goes all the way back to Melchizedek and Abram and before that. He just said, when you do these things, they're symbolically pointing at, reminding you what I'm talking about here in John 6, all right? But I want us to see that beautiful picture about, he says, you want to have everlasting life. If you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you possess everlasting life. These are, in other words, you have the things, possess meaning you own and have, what brings everlasting life. Do my actions, driven by my thoughts, my beliefs, my approach. Do you like that? I found it cool today when I got that, all right? Because I know that's a section that really trips people up. It tripped them up. They stopped walking with him. A lot of people stopped walking with him. I think that's what he was trying to bring out, okay? He says, this is the key. He said, it's the spirit that gives life, the flesh doesn't profit at all. The words that I speak to you are spirit. That's the blood, and they are life. That's the blood of this. The spirit of it, the intention. In other words, it comes from the mind, thoughts, beliefs, etc. of Messiah that come into you that feed the fleshly behavior. This is a flesh suit. This is the thing that picks up things, puts things down, right? Does works, shows up on Shabbat, right? The body is animated by the blood. Your heart stops and blood stops flowing, you die. There's no flesh doing anything at that point. So the blood flowing is what gives life to the rest of the flesh, right? So the blood flow that he's talking about is his mind. Let this mind be in you. And so after saying all of that, he says, well, you guys, you're gonna walk out on me too? And they're like, well, where are we gonna go? You have the words, the instructions, the beliefs, the thoughts, etc., that bring everlasting life. And he's like, yeah, but one of you's got a problem. Now, the one that's got a problem, we're gonna see, the problem isn't that he gave in to the devil in some way. He gave in to some level of, I see the world this way, Yeshua's not doing what I see, I'm disappointed, I'm gonna go and point the finger at him because he's not doing what I think he should do. Which is what people do to me, they do to every leader out there at some point. Every problem we have now in the country, I don't care who the president is, people point a finger at the president, whoever he is, because at some point, he's not acting like you want him to. And he's not doing the things you want him to. Well, he doesn't have to. He's got to do what he needs to do. And you may not agree with it. I have not agreed with lots of things that every president has done. I don't like everything Trump has done. I don't like anything anybody's done. But it's okay, it's their job, not mine. My job is to figure out how to react to what they do, okay? I haven't agreed with any president with everything that they've done. Okay, I've liked some better than others, but that's not really relevant. That's just my opinion, I suppose, okay? But we see a lot of the unrest in a nation when the people are frustrated where the rhetoric coming from whatever leader doesn't match them, okay? Now, I guess if it's bad enough, you get things like revolutions, and you see them throughout history, right? You had the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution. You got all these revolutions that happen, right? Chinese had a revolution. I mean, lots of countries have revolutions at some point, but I'm not promoting that for here. I'm just simply saying is, most of the time, though, you don't have that, okay? Most of the time, it's just a different leader comes in, and he's gonna match well with you or not for a period of time, okay? But when it comes to this This leader's perfect. And if I don't match up, the problem is me. If we have a human leader and we don't match, it could be either of us. Or a combination of some of it one way, some of it the other way, right? But in this situation, the problem is definitely me if there's a problem, right? Okay, so he's saying is, yeah, I taught you all this. Yes, you recognize all these things, but still, yet under all of that, somebody's still not getting it. There's at least one of you that's having enough of a problem that you're gonna be a problem, okay? Is gonna deliver me up. Now, of course, don't get mad at Judas. It had to happen, okay? You know, there's still Christians out there that call the Jews Christ killers. I don't remember them doing anything to him. Yeah, they stood against him and everything. Rome decided to kill him. But it seems to me that we read in chapter 16 of Matthew that he said this had to happen. It was part of the plan. So why are we mad at whoever had their role in it? Okay? It had to happen. If it doesn't happen, what do you end up with? If he doesn't die and get resurrected and do all the things, where does that leave you? Right? So, because I still today have heard people refer to Jewish friends of mine and call them like, you guys were, you guys killed Jesus. That's what they say. I'm just quoting them. First of all, whoever did it 2,000 plus years ago. It certainly wasn't me or anybody related to me. Okay? But this is what we're going, this is what we're dealing with, right? Okay? So, I want to make sure that we're getting this. This is a really interesting thing here because remember in verse 70 it says, and one of you is a devil. One of you has decided to feed into a accusation, we'll call it accusatory, where did I put the definition? A slandering, accusing, attacking somebody's reputation mindset. Somebody isn't happy with what I'm doing. Somebody is disappointed in how I'm handling things. It happens to be Judas. So now let's go to Luke 22. Okay, we're gonna deal with Judas here, okay? Luke 22. And verse 1. And the festival of unleavened bread drew near, which is called Passover, and the chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to kill him, just like he said they would, right? All right? For they feared the people. In other words, they feared that the people were going towards him and away from them. And Satan, remember what Satan is, right? Just an adversarial mindset, having entered Yehuda. So we know this is talking about a mindset, not the being. We know the being is dealing with in Job because the being is interacting with the Creator, right? It goes up to Yahweh and says, Yahweh says, and what do you think of Job? Like he's interacting with a being called Satan. Here it says the Satan mindset, disposition, okay, we'll call it intrinsic nature, had entered into Judas, into Yehuda, who was called from Kirioth, who was numbered with the 12. Okay? So he got an adversarial spirit going on. Just like you could have a happy spirit, you could have an obnoxious spirit, you could have an angry spirit, you could have a sad spirit. Okay, it's not an entity coming into your body from outside. It's just your disposition, okay? And by disposition, I mean, it's not like if you're that way in a moment, but I mean, if you start being like that consistently, it becomes your disposition, where you are now walking in an intrinsic nature of whatever that is, right? Okay? Whether it's a good or negative, positive or negative emotional space. Okay, some people that are just happy. That's the disposition. Some other people that are never happy. That's the disposition. Okay, their whole nature. Some people that are unhappy and then they're happy again in 5 minutes. So obviously that wasn't their nature, it was a moment. Does that make sense? All right, so there's a difference. So apparently this has come into his nature. He had become an adversary, okay? He had become an adversary. And he went and spoke with the chief priests and captains how he might deliver him up. He wanted Yeshua delivered up. He knows he was there for that he's Messiah and the words of life, and he was there for all of this stuff. Why is he doing this? Now, we all speculate, and in none of the Gospels does it actually play this out. We see this in almost all the representations in the movies and the Chosen and the whatever. It makes sense, though, that he did not see Messiah doing what he believed Messiah should do. Now, we see Kepha have the same problem, but it's not his nature changing. It was for a moment, okay? Because Kepha was like, he said to Kepha, get behind me, Satan. You're having a Satan moment. Judas, his whole nature changed. And he was so upset, disappointed, and frustrated that Messiah wasn't doing. We speculate, and we're probably right, because what do you think the Jews expected of Messiah at the time? That he would, like Moses, free them from the bondage, in this case the Romans instead of the Egyptians. And Yeshua clearly wasn't doing any of that. He'd never really gotten to that place. This is played out really beautifully in the show The Chosen. Not a big fan necessarily, but there's some interesting things that you see interacting, where you see Judas like, we got them in a place we need them to be. The people are ready to declare you king. We can go and Yeshua's like, that's not my plan. And Judas is like, what? He's so confused. He's like, what do you mean it's not the plan? It's like, you're not listening. You're not getting it. That's not the plan. And so in his frustration and disappointment, he's one of the 12. He had heard all of these things. He was there when we said, and one of you is a devil. And he says, and then he mentions that it's Judas. So Judas is there as they're recognizing the flesh, blood-eating, drinking thing going on, and you are the Messiah, and all of these other things. He was there when the conversation with Peter, who do people think I am, etc. He was there for all of this stuff. So the logical conclusion is, yet he wasn't being Messiah the way Judas thought he should be. And so then he's like, well, then you know what? You're not Messiah. We're going to turn you in, and I'll wait for the one that's going to do it the way I want. Some people get frustrated with God that way. God didn't heal somebody. God didn't intervene in some way, and so then he must not be God because he didn't do what you wanted, the way you wanted, in the form you wanted. Disappointment is the killer, okay? Disappointment is the killer right there. But the problem is in the perspective of the person, not God. He's not the problem. Your perspective, how you're perceiving what's happening. Judas was not perceiving this right. And unfortunately, it really doesn't give us detail on what was wrong with how he was perceiving it. We can guess, but that's the only thing that makes any sense. This was Messiah clearly not. Now, he's in Jerusalem, Hosanna, Hosanna. This is perfect timing for him to come in and declare himself king. The people are ready to uprise. And he's not doing it. He's basically told them, and I'm going to get killed tomorrow. And then I'm going to rise on the third day. And I'm not causing the uprising then either. That's not the plan. Are you letting a Satan mindset come in, or a devil mindset come in, when you're not liking the plan? Because the plan doesn't match what you want it to be. It can happen, be careful. But this is a mindset that's happening. It's not a possession thing. Oh, poor Judas, the devil dispossessed him. No, it had already been in him. Just like it was already in Peter. Because we don't see a lot of Judas until this. We don't see any actually, right? We see a lot of Peter though. We see that Peter's reaction to Yeshua is very consistent with Peter. Okay? We're not surprised that he's like, oh no, that's not gonna happen, and whatever, okay? So it's consistent with him. It's not like an outside being came in and made him act that way. But when he acted that way, it was in line with Satan mindset, as opposed to being in line with Yeshua mindset. You see the difference? And we're to have a Yeshua mindset, Philippians 2:5, right? Let this mind be in you. But we have the choice. You could feed into, Yeshua asked them that when we were just reading, right? Are you also gonna leave? Right, we read that in Matthew. In John, when we were reading that in John. He said, are you guys gonna leave too, John 6? It's like he wants to see where their mindset was at. He's like, oh, no. We don't understand what you just were talking about, but we're not going anywhere. You have the words of life, okay? So we're okay not understanding. We'll ask you, and they did often ask about parables and things. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean, right? But when he explained what he meant, apparently Judas wasn't really okay with that. It wasn't lining up with what he wanted to hear. You know, a lot of you come in for counseling and we end up losing you in some way because you don't hear what you want to hear. You heard what you're supposed to hear. I'm very confident in that. But if you didn't like what you heard because it wasn't what you wanted to hear, you'll have issue, you'll blame me, you'll become the accuser, you'll be the attacker, you'll be the adversary because you didn't like it. Which, by the way, if anybody ever comes to you attacking a leader of any sort, okay? It could be at your job. I don't care where it is, okay? So I'm not just saying me or the leadership here. You might want to first figure out if that person has an issue and maybe it's not the boss. It could be the boss, but you might not want to just jump to the conclusion that it is the boss, the authority figure. It could be that the authority figure didn't give them what they wanted in the form they wanted, but gave them what they needed to have. Because most people that get mad at me, they get mad at me after I told them no. Can we agree? You understand? They wanted something, I said no. You ever talk to a child and say no? Do they usually handle it well? Throw a fit, don't they? They'll tell you, I don't like you anymore, and I imagine, I hate you. And kids will scream every nasty thing in the book. Why? Because you didn't say yes. You didn't enable them or entitle them or give them what they wanted the way they wanted. You know? They ask for something and you get them to something, but it's not the exact one they wanted. They throw a fit. You asked for this, I got you this. That's what I could afford, that's what I got you. I want an iPhone 17. Well, I got you a phone. You didn't have a phone? You can't afford to buy anything yourself? Here's a phone. But that's not what I wanted. Fine, give me it back. By the way, all you parents need to do that. If you give your kids something and they start whining about it, take it back. And please, do not get them what they wanted. If they're going to react with that nonsense, say, okay, fine, give it back to me. But then no, now you get nothing. See, children, you need to be listening. All the children listening? In the 70s, yeah, a million years ago, parents made one meal. And if you didn't like it, you were hungry. Parents didn't make different meals for each child. Wait. You know what else? They never asked the kid what they wanted. A kid asked the parent, what's for dinner? And whatever they said, that was for dinner. Okay? I don't remember my mother asking, well, what do you want? Okay? I mean, it might have been those rare moments where she had nothing in plan, as I said, what do you want? If she liked the idea, she might do it. But generally speaking, one meal was made, and you ate it or you didn't eat it. I watch parents today come to Oneg and stuff. They got different things for every kid. Look, if there's allergies, I get it. But that's not always the case. Well, I don't like peas, and I don't like this, and I don't like... I don't care. That's what you got. And so I asked my mother what's for dinner. You know what I got most of the time? Dinner. In other words, whatever it is, that's what it is. Because she maybe hadn't made her mind up yet. What's for dinner? Dinner. Anybody get a parent do that to them? Some of you. Okay? But we're so entitled. We're so spoiled. And you know what? The fault is each generation, it's not that the kids are getting worse, the parenting is getting worse. And you're raising these totally spoiled children. Some of it is you are overcompensating the fact that you thought your parents were too harsh, and now I'm going to just never be harsh to my kid ever. Your kids are awful brats who don't listen to anything. Why would you say that, Rabbi? Because I see it. And they're awesome kids, if you would ever discipline them. You know, and I watch you. You know, every Oneg, like after services, there are children running around without any supervision. It's like, where's the parenting? Where are you with your children running around? Okay, if they don't have a teen in their age, Well, actually, you know what? Teenagers better know what they're doing, even worse than the ones who are younger. Okay? But those little ones running around and getting into all kinds of trouble and doing things they shouldn't be doing and breaking things and whatever they're doing, why don't you know where your kids are? Why are you letting your kids just run around and scream? And also, when your kid is acting up in here, why aren't you picking them up and taking them out? Or your kid, I'm not talking about during Oneg, anytime. Why are you not disciplining your child? It's your child. I watch people in restaurants, and we're out as a whole group, and the kid's acting up, and I'm watching the parents like, would you frickin' just... Yes, I said that. It's like, why won't you... If you go back to our generation, you acted up in the restaurant, you out in the car in a minute, or the bathroom, and you came out, okay? You weren't acting up in front of everybody, right? Hey, come here. Or we got actually... Okay? You got picked up by the back of your shirt. Come with me. You know what I'm talking about, older people? And all you kids are like, oh my gosh, that was awful. How did you guys live? That's how we grew up to be strong. Okay? That is how we grew up to be strong. And that's why all of you guys, majority, are weak like crazy. And everything makes you cry, and everything's too hard, and everything hurts your feelings, and you guys all need safe spaces. You know when I needed a safe space? When Dad was chasing me with the belt. That's when you need a safe space. Not when somebody's hurting your feelings with words. Okay? I was looking for a safe space. Right? You think that's bad? If you, now my family didn't do this, but a lot of you grew up with a switch. They made you get your own switch. Could you imagine? What's a switch? It's a stick that they're gonna smack you with. And it wasn't just that they had one, they made you go get one. And you had better get a good one. Not good for you. One that like you hold it and it says, okay, like a wet noodle. Oh no, you better bring something that's got some snap to it. A little sting to it. See, you guys were abused. Yeah, absolutely. It grew us up though. Okay, it grew us up. You're all thinking like, man, that was crazy times. I'm glad I wasn't growing up in those days, but you'd be stronger now. You would. You would definitely be stronger now. You certainly wouldn't be bothered by all the things that make you crumple into a little puddle for nothing. All right? So don't wonder why us 60 pluses and whatever, the Gen X's and boomers are looking at you like, seriously? When you cry over nothing? And you whine over nothing? You're depressed about everything? I saw a statistic the other day, I heard it on the radio. Depression in whatever the age range of youth and everything has doubled percentage-wise in the last, I don't know, like 10 years or so. It's not because things are more depressing. Because people say, oh, the world is so bad. Look, I'm telling you, over 60 years, it's been much worse, okay? So whatever you're freaking out about, it's because you got a limited 18 years of life and you just don't know what anything, you have no perspective, okay? Spoiled little kid, okay? But it's because we've gotten so coddled and weak, we can't handle anything, okay? You haven't been made to handle anything. Yeshua's like, I'm putting you guys through the, you wonder why did Yeshua talk about blood and eating his flesh? And he wanted to see what they were really made out of. He wanted to see, are you gonna stay when I say weird things? Are you gonna quit when you hear weird things that you don't understand? It was a test. And if I don't meet your expectations, you're just gonna, like Judas, turn me in? Okay? God doesn't need to meet your expectation, you need to meet his. Okay? He's God, you're not. Okay? It's really a simple thing. So Judas is having this problem. So where did I take it? Luke 22, all right? And so, Satan entering into Yehuda, so that mindset, okay? And he went and turned him in, and they were glad, and they gave him silver. And he promised and was seeking an occasion to deliver him up to them away from the crowd. So he didn't want to do this in front of everybody, but he wanted to turn them in. I think part of the reason he wanted to do it away from the crowd is because he didn't want to be the one that the crowd is seeing as the one that turned him in. So he's trying to cover himself there, right? All right. So that's important that we get that, okay? So it says Satan entering, right? The adversarial spirit, nature, disposition entered him, okay? And I said in my notes here, where did that come from? Did that come from outside of him or from inside of him? Inside of him. You need to all know this for yourselves. Satan, the being, is going to work with you when you have it already inside something to work with. This was already inside of him, okay? Now, Peter had issues too, but not on this level. Because Peter was ready to swing both, either way. He could swing all the way to, be kind to yourself, and all the way to whatever you say. I'll be loyal forever. Of course, he said that, and then, Yeshua calls him out and says, you're going to deny me 3 times, okay? So let's go. He goes now, we're going to go to John 13, okay? John 13. Oh, we're running out of time, but we're going to get there. John 13, verse 1. Oh my gosh, I want to read like the whole chapter here. That's going to be a bit. All right, let's see what we get done. We got 12 minutes. And before the festival of Passover, Yeshua, knowing that his hour had come, that he should move out of this world onto the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And supper taking place, the devil having already put it into the heart of Yehuda, this adversarial, accusing mindset was in Judas. He said to deliver him up, Yeshua, knowing that the Father had given all into his hands, and that he had come from Elohim and was going to Elohim. So in other words, Yeshua knew exactly what he was, okay? He rose from supper, laid aside his garments, having taken up a towel, he girded himself. After that, now remember, let's get the context. A lot of people talk about the foot washing and all this stuff happening here, but this is in the context of knowing what was going to happen next. Knowing, it says that Judas had this issue. So he's doing this in response to that. You see the flow? This is his mindset. He goes, you know what? Knowing all this, I'm going to do something that makes a point. There's no reason to mention what it says in verse 2, okay? Unless verse 2 leads us into this foot washing. This idea of what has come into Judas, okay? He also is preparing the 11 on what to do and how to react after Judas does, so that they don't go where he goes. Does it make sense? After he had put the water into the basin and began to wash the feet, afterwards he began to wash the feet of the taught ones and wipe them with the towel which he girded himself. So he came, okay, so he was doing this and nobody was stopping him or having an issue. They kind of looked at him weird, like, why are you doing this? In society in those days, the lowest of the servants washed people's feet when they came into the dwelling because they were walking around barefoot and just in sandals out in dirt, okay? And so they're looking at him like, okay. And so most of them are just sitting there going, let's let this play out. He'll explain or something at some point, right? They're just letting it play out. He gets to Peter, though. And Peter goes, Master, do you wash my feet? Like, you washing my feet? Like, that shouldn't be. And he said to him, Yeshua says, you don't know. You don't understand what I'm doing now. Okay, this is the important piece of it, because that's a message to Judas. You don't understand what I'm doing now. You see? This is a message to Judas. It's a message to the 11. It's a message to us, right? The other 11 and us. He says, there's going to be moments where you don't understand what I'm doing now. Not just what I'm doing in general, what I'm doing now. Okay? They didn't understand everything about the resurrection either because they weren't there waiting for him on the 3rd day. If they had understood it, why are they not all standing there waiting for it? Okay? One has to show up first and realize that he's not there to go tell everybody else. Okay? Even the priests believed it more than the disciples because they said, go put guards there to make sure nothing happens because they thought somebody might steal the body to make this thing look like it or whatever, right? So they kind of believed it more than even the disciples did. He goes, you don't know what I'm doing now, but you shall know after this. In other words, let it play out. You don't get it right now, but you will. But you need to be okay not understanding it now. Some of you, do you struggle with that? Do you understand what I'm saying? There's going to be things, leadership tells you, you get inspired from above, whatever, that you're not going to understand it now. But you got to trust that you will understand it after it plays out. Okay, after this, after it's played out, you'll get this, okay? So Kepha says, by no means shall you wash my feet ever. Peter, you got to love him, right? Okay, he is so zealous. And Yeshua said, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. So watch this pendulum swinging crazy guy. So he says, so Kepha goes, Master, not only my feet, but my hands and my head, just wash everything. Peter can turn on a dime, okay? He was so zealous, he needed to slow down and think things through a little bit, right? Because that guy would overreact to anything. His heart was right. And okay, a lot of you blues are your hearts are right, but man, you will overreact, jump to conclusions. That's what he's doing here, right? Jump to conclusions and overreact. What do I mean by jump to conclusions? Yeshua just told him, you don't have enough information to jump to a conclusion. You don't understand what I'm doing now, but later you will, when you have enough information to understand this. When we get to cognitive functions in a couple of weeks at the feast, you'll understand what the J and the P of the 4 letters that Myers-Briggs uses. The J, which Peter's very J, okay, is because J's want to label things and know what they are as fast as possible. And Yeshua says, be a little bit more P or perceiving, which means you need more information. Although the problem with the P's is sometimes they just want so much information, there's paralysis by analysis, they never make a decision, okay? J's make it too quickly, and the P's don't make it at all. If at the extreme, all right, at the extreme. Okay, not all the time, but that's the extremes, okay? So Kepha's just jumping to conclusion after conclusion. Oh, if I need you to wash my feet, then wash everything. I thought, oh my gosh, Peter. Can you just trust and let me do what I do? Okay? But that's what a parent should be able to say to a child. That's what leadership should be able to say to you. Can you just trust what we're trying to get you guys to do and what we're offering you, what we're providing you with? Can you just slow down and take it one step at a time, even if you can't see it yet, what the point is, okay? Afterwards, you'll understand, all right? So then Yeshua says, he who has had his bath does not need to wash except his feet. You've already had a bath. Your problem is your feet because you've been walking around, etc. Okay? But it's clean altogether. So, and you are clean, but not all of you. So now he's making the picture of all of this. He says, for he knew who would deliver him up, so he said, you are not all clean. So when he had washed their feet and taken his garments and sat down again, he said to them, do you know what I have done to you? Not a clue. See, remember he told Peter, when I explain it, you'll understand it. He says, you call me teacher and master, rabbi. Okay, that's when they would have called him rabbi and master. And you say, well, for I am. Then if I, your master and teacher, have washed your feet, in other words, took on the role of the lowest servant, you also ought to wash one another's feet. Unlike some churches out there, I do not believe this is a new Torah commandment, that you need to wash each other's feet. People do that at Passover, which is funny because this was not the Passover meal. So why they link it to Passover, I don't know. But he was making an important point with a group of people that were having certain issues, and one particular that could have influenced the others, that he wanted to make a point. If I, above all of you, can lower myself to the lowest servant level and serve you, then you ought to serve each other the same way. Be willing to serve and come down to get your pride, ego, and other things out of the way. It was pride and ego for Peter. Oh no, you're not washing my feet. You know. Look, if Messiah wants to do something to me, he can do whatever he wants. Can we agree? Do I have to understand it? No. I'd like to. If I don't, it's okay. I'll understand it after. That's what he said to him. I believe this is probably the same way with everybody. You might not understand it now, but afterwards you'll understand it. Look, when he told them, chapter 16 of Matthew, right, he told them, he's just started at that point telling them, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to go to Jerusalem. They're going to pick on me and attack me. Eventually they're going to kill me. I'm going to be raised the third day. They, afterwards now, after he resurrects and later, after we get into the book of Acts, they understood. They didn't understand until after. It had to play out first. Of course, then he had to come back and talk to them and help explain it. But then they could understand. Until then, they couldn't understand. They just had to accept. Remember we talked about this in the Torah portion. That which is revealed belongs to you. What's not revealed belongs to him. So he's saying, I've revealed only this much. I'm doing that, but you don't understand it yet because I haven't revealed that to you. I will, and then you'll understand it. So, he goes, if I, your master and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. Verse 15, for if I gave you an example that you should do as I have done to you, I have served. He's leaving them. He said, I have served you. You need to now go serve others, serve each other, right? The servant role. By the way, I said that during the announcements. I was talking about some of you guys not volunteering to serve at the feast. You're missing everything that we're talking about right now, aren't you? Because isn't the whole point to serve? That's what he's telling them right there. So now, he goes, truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is an emissary greater than the one who sent him. Oh. If you know these teachings, these instructions, blessed are you if you do them. Everything from Genesis to Revelation is blessing if you do. Even the don'ts is doing, right? Not doing something is still something you did. You made the effort not to do something, right? You're told, don't work on Shabbat. Okay, so you don't work on Shabbat. That's still a doing, okay? So blessed are you in doing. Understing it's only part of it. If you're not doing it, then basically you're a flesh without the blood, right? Eat my flesh, but you're not eating his blood, okay? Because you're just doing whatever you're doing, but you're not doing what matches up with the blood. Because if you're working on Shabbat, you're doing, but it doesn't match up with life, his words of life, the Torah, his instructions. All right, then he says, verse 18, I do not speak concerning all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but wait a minute. He chose? So this is not the devil coming in and trying to muck up the works? I know who I have chosen, but the scripture might be filled, so that the scripture might be filled, right? He who eats bread with me has lifted up his heel against me. Now I say to you before it takes place, that when it does take place, you shall believe that I am. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who receives whomever I send receives me, and he who receives me receives whom I sent. Oh! You may want to think about if you have a teacher, an Ephesians 4:11 teacher, you better receive him like you're receiving Yeshua. Some of you treat those teachers and leaders in very disrespectful ways. What did he just say? He said, if, this is important, right? Let me get back to the verse. Where was I? Verse 20, right? If, he says, he receives whomever I send, receives me. But that's meaning an appointed person, an anointed and appointed person. This is not saying like the church teaches in Matthew 28 that everybody now is sent to do everything. That's not what it's saying. Paul doesn't say that ever. Paul says there are those that are anointed and appointed to do these roles. They represent the one who anointed and appointed them. If you receive them, you receive me. Okay. The reciprocal is true too. If you don't, you don't. You don't receive them, you're not receiving him. Is that fair? Okay. Well, I mean, is it a fair representation? I don't know if you think that's fair, but I mean, it's an accurate representation. Now, verse 21, when Yeshua had said this, he was troubled in spirit and witnessed and said, truly, truly, I say to you, one of you shall deliver me up. The taught ones looked at one another, doubting of whom he spoke. They were like, well, who is it? Who is it, right? So one of his taught ones whom he loved was reclining on the bosom of Yeshua. And Shimon and Kepha then motioned to him to ask who it was. In other words, they were sitting spread out, however they were. Who knows what the painting is not right. But I mean, they were sitting around some big table. Or on the floor, probably even too. There was lots of times they just sat on the floor. But they were spread out. And so Peter motioned to whoever was right there and said, ask him, who is it? Okay? And so leaning back on his breast, so Kepha had asked him, right, where am I up to? Right. In 24, Shimon and Kepha then motioned to him to ask who it was of whom he spoke. And leaning back on the breast of Yeshua, he said, Master, who is it? And Yeshua answered and said, it is he to whom I shall give a piece of bread. And when I have dipped it, and having dipped the bread, he gave it to Judas. They all saw this. Okay? And after the piece of bread, Satan entered into him. Yeshua therefore said to him, what you do quickly. It's not that Satan entered in him. That's when he decided, that's when he kicked in, I'm going to do what I committed to do. Okay? In other words, that's where the strength to take action popped up. Satan said, come on, let's do it. It still was Judas that wanted to do it. Remember, Satan is the cheerleader to do wrong. The cheerleader to do what you want that doesn't match up with what he wants. Right? We talked about that many times in this teaching. So Satan's there going, all right, Judas, come on, let's get him. So Yeshua says, what you do it quickly. Now, Yeshua knew who it was. The 11 knew who it was. So the fact that Judas did this, is it really Judas's fault? He was allowed to do it. Yeshua could have stopped him. He could have asked the 11 to stop him. Somebody could have stopped him. But he said, what you do it quickly, because it needs to happen now. The Passover's coming. The next day, this has to happen now. So make it happen now. But no one at the table knew why he said this to him. They were still trying to process that he said, whoever eats the bread, I give the bread to, whatever, right? All right. For some were supposing because Judas had the bag and that Yeshua was saying to him, buy what we need for the Passover that hasn't happened yet. Because there's already Passover, you couldn't go buy anything because then the first day of unleavened bread would have started by the time they were eating dinner. More evidence this was not a Passover meal. Or to give somewhat to the poor. So having received the piece of bread, he then went out straight away and it was night. So when therefore he went out, Yeshua said, now the son of Adam has been esteemed and Elohim has been esteemed in him. If Elohim has been esteemed in him, Elohim shall also esteem him in himself and straightway esteem him. Little children, yet a little while I am with you. You shall seek me. And as I said to the Jews, where I am going, you are unable to come. That was in a previous section of scripture, of the Gospels. He says, and where I'm going, you're unable to come. And now I also say to you, a renewed command I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, by the way, remember I told you the story about the guy with the vacuum and serving at the feast and all this stuff? He also used to come up to me and say, look, I'm not worrying about so much of the commandments. Right now I'm just trying to figure out how to love you. A year later, he said, no, forget that. I'm trying to figure out how to love you as Yeshua loves me. See, some of you are still stuck on trying to figure out how to love each other. No, you are to learn to love one another as I also have loved you. That's a whole different level of love. You think on a fleshly level, I got to love my brother, no, you got to love one another. He says, as I have loved you, you are to love one another. In the same manner as, like I have done. Wow, that's a whole different level, okay? Some of you want to argue about all kinds of interesting things about scripture and calendars and dates and this and that. Have you figured out how to love each other as Yeshua loved you? You got a bigger problem, okay? You got a much bigger problem. All right, then he says, by this all know that you are my taught ones if you have loved one another like this, like I love you. Then he says, Shimon Kepha said to him, Master, where are you going? Yeshua answered him, said, where I am going, you're unable to follow now, but afterwards you shall follow me. Kepha said to him, Master, why am I unable to follow you now? I shall lay down my life for you. Why do people run their mouth? Because a lot of you do the same thing. You run your mouth without thinking. You think you're being impressive. You think you're... That's Peter. There's no filter. He's just running his mouth. All ego and pride and emotion. He says, wherever you're going, because I guess he thought, well, where he's going, because he said, I'm going to go get killed. He said, wherever you're going, it's okay. I'll lay down my life for you. Okay? And Yeshua says, he says, shall you lay down your life for me? It's truly I say to you that the cock shall not crow until you have denied me 3 times. Now, by the cock crowing, it's also talking about the person that cries out to let you know when the morning prayers are, okay? You still see this in the Islamic groups, right? The one who cries out to let you know when prayers are. That was something going on even back in Yeshua's day, not necessarily Islamically wise. Even the Jews would have somebody let you know it's time for the morning prayers. So it wasn't that a rooster had to go and make sound. That's not necessarily what it was talking about, okay? Because where they were, there was probably no roosters running around. Okay, this was in the city where other things were happening, okay? But it would have been the person making the announcement for the morning prayers, okay? He said, you'll have denied me 3 times. He says, yeah, you like to run your mouth. He says, like, listen, you think you can lay down your life for me? And yeah, I know you will eventually. But right now, you're not even close to being ready. You're going to deny me 3 times in the next 12 hours. Or less. This is already close to midnight here. This is the end of the day. You're not even going to make it 8, 9 hours till the morning. Be careful the bragging and the claims and all the stuff that you do. What does the verse say? Be careful you think you stand, lest you. And boy, Peter doesn't feel good when he realizes what he did. Of course, he gets strong after that. But he had to first recognize his weakness first and repent of it. And realize, you know what? I ran my mouth too much. Okay? And a lot of people do that. They run your mouth way too much. All right. So hopefully this is starting to make some sense. We're getting a more clear picture so we could see this mindset that the encouragement of the enemy could have a part in is what was going on in Peter, in Judas, right? Because Peter also had his moment. We talked about that earlier. And then we get to Judas. We have these moments, all right? So hopefully you can see this playing out. And what else did I have here? All right, we got even more to deal with that starting again next week, okay? So at least we got through the first page of notes. All right, so hopefully that was good. Let's go ahead and go before the Father. Father, we come before you, and we want to be strong and humble at the same time. We want to be trusting that what we don't know, we will know. What we don't understand, we will understand at some point. And that, Father, you would grant us and encourage us to have shalom in the meantime, between those 2 points. That we will trust that we will understand. We will trust that understanding is not critical to the functioning, okay? I've had people tell me, this is between you and me, not the Father, he's listening, he knows how I get distracted in the middle of the prayer. I've had people tell me, well, I'm not going to start keeping the Sabbath or doing this piece of Torah till I understand it. I don't remember understanding it being an excuse for not doing or being a requirement for doing, okay? What you understand is who gave the instruction. As long as you understand how to do it, you should do it. What to do, how to do it, when to do it, then do it. Well, I don't understand why. Why is not your problem, okay? If you're not doing it and using an excuse, then it's your problem. It's causing a problem. Father, help us not to do that. Help us to trust you to what is revealed that we do. Even if it's not revealed, why? Even if we don't understand the point, but we trust and know where it came from. And that's enough. Dayenu, okay? So, Father, we come to you very humbly, I appreciate you've given me words, hopefully they're your words, to help explain HaSatan's role in all these things, and how a lot of it is a metaphor and a point to when we become with a mindset that's adversarial, accusatory, slandering, causing an attack on someone else's reputation. So we understand that that's when we act in a Satan role or a devil role. So Father, we want to thank you for the understanding. Help us to embrace it and put it into our lives and have it be a part of our walk going forward. So Father, we come before you now and ask all these things and appreciate all in the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. Amen. Amen.